Welcome to the SDA Housing Podcast, brought to you by NDIS Property Australia. Before starting this episode, we need to provide a general disclaimer. Information contained in this podcast is general in nature only. It does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. You need to consider your financial situation and needs before making any decisions based on the information in this podcast. And you should consider seeking independent and professional advice for your personal circumstances. All right, let's begin.
Hi everyone, my name is Debbie from NDIS Property Australia, and you're listening to the SDA Housing Podcast, a show that explains, highlights, guides, and brings awareness about all things SDA in this ever-changing NDIS world. This is our monthly SDA Unlocked episode where we delve into the supply and demand data for specialist disability accommodation in different areas around Australia. Doing it a little bit differently this month, I've got our resident in-house data scientist, Lenore, with me today. Hi, Lenore.
Hi, Debbie.
How are you going?
Yeah, pretty good. And you?
I'm good. And you have been so busy. You've actually created a couple of new data reports for us to, I guess, analyse the data just in different ways. Now, I want to just underpin everything that we're going to talk about on this episode as saying that, as everybody knows, the quarterly NDIA data is not necessarily fantastically accurate. However, it is the only baseline that we have to start from. When we do all our reporting, we use it as the starting point, and we, of course, bring in all our own intel into our analysis of the data of the supply and demand. So having said that, we are going to talk about the information that Lenore compiled in a new report called our SDA over and under supply. And it's really interesting, and it actually just shows the data in a bit of a different way to the way a lot of people might actually analyse it. Basically, what Lenore has done is, do you want to explain the three different levels of information that you've actually categorised here, Lenore?
Okay. On an SA4 basis, I have calculated our current supply and subtracted the demand.
And this is in places, isn't it?
In places, yeah. That's right, in bedrooms. Yeah. And then I have also compiled the current supply plus the pipeline minus the projected demand to get a little bit of a view of what is happening or what might be happening in the future. And because the current supply includes existing as well as legacy builds, and we know that legacy builds will be defunded within the next few years, and a lot of the existing dwellings may not be up to standard and may also be defunded. So those two categories will be or might be obsolete. We included the pipeline in our data. So we are interested mainly in the new build stock, new building stock, and also in what is in the pipeline, which is coming up and will transform into new build within the next few years.
Yes.
So trying to look at what is happening within the near future, we are looking at the new build supply plus the pipeline, and then subtract the projected demand.
Tell me about the difference between current demand and projected demand.
Current demand is, as the demand is outlined in the NDIS quarterly report, and the projected demand is as the NDIA projects demand within the next 2027, we have data for 2027 and 2032.
That's right. So, yeah, the NDIA put out a report last year with their projected SDA demand projections. And, yeah, I don't know how accurate you could assume the 2032 and the 2042 numbers to be. So we've only gone as far as 2027 in this to try and keep it a little bit more realistic, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are really good ways of categorizing the data. I think it's really important to exclude the existing and legacy from the current new build to get a picture of what it might be long term over the next several years. And what that's done, Lenore, is really given us an interesting picture of the current supply, the short-term supply, and a longer-term supply, correct?
And while the data is not 100% correct, it does give us some idea about the trends.
For sure, yeah. So that also leads me into the other report, which I'm not going to really talk about too much because it's actually still a work in progress, isn't it?
Yes.
Which is trends, because we've been obviously collecting this data for a few years now. I think the first one we had was back in December 21, so I guess that's 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And so Lenore's in the process of calculating the movements every 3 months from that time period. So over the last 2.5 years of the demand, of the current supply, of the pipeline, and of the new build, correct?
Yes. That's right.
Yeah, so I might allude to that in just looking at this all overall oversupply, just when, it jumps out at me that there is some really interesting figures here and what the trends is showing us, how that has maybe changed.
Yeah, some of it is really surprising.
Yeah, a lot of it, when I've just glanced at these graphs, some of it's just been sort of plodding along at a similar rate, but in other areas, there's massive changes over the last 3 or 6 months.
Yeah, especially in the pipeline.
Yeah, so I think that makes that information really very pertinent. Whilst we know that not all that pipeline stock may eventuate, we know that those potential builds have already been advised to the NDIA by way of the preliminary SDA design certification. So most of them more likely to actually eventuate into SDAs than not. Anyway, so having explained how we're doing this, what we've done, I want to go over just a few interesting figures Australia-wide and then state by state. So obviously we've got the 8 regions of Australia, states and territories, and by far the most interesting one is New South Wales. It's got the biggest population, the biggest demand, the biggest undersupply. We know that already. We know there's such a need in New South Wales, but because of the cost, obviously most of the supply is needed in Sydney and areas around, and the cost to construct makes it prohibitive or just not feasible in most cases. We're seeing a long-term undersupply of something like 4,000 places by 2027. That's kind of scary. So, and that's because we have such a lot of legacy and existing stock. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
At the moment, we're looking at an undersupply of 370 odd if we take into account the current supply and the current demand. But yeah, even accounting for the pipeline, remove the existing and legacy stock, and that is a phenomenally bad undersupply in New South Wales. Obviously, we haven't broken that down into the different areas, but this is just a big picture. The most oversupplied state, and this does not come as a surprise to us because we are in Queensland. We've been working here for 4 years selling SDA, and we've known for a couple of years that this oversupply is there. So yeah, Queensland is the most oversupplied state. Not in terms of numbers, but in terms of percentages, if you like. Well, actually, it is in terms of numbers too.
Yeah, that's right.
We've got almost an equilibrium as we stand at the moment. 34 across the whole of the state. Current supply less current demand, 34 places under supply, which is not a lot for the whole state. Massive pipeline has gone in, but even taking into account the existing and legacy properties that may well come out in the future, we've still got a huge oversupply. I'll go into that in a little more detail when I go into the state. Victoria also has an undersupply, and we've been saying for a long time Melbourne, Victoria is a really good place to build SDA. Currently a bit of an oversupply, 200 places, but once you take out those existing and legacy, even when you look at the pipeline, we're looking at about 1,600 places undersupplied across the state of Victoria. The tricky bit, of course, in all of this is determining exactly where that demand is.
Yeah.
And that is far more difficult to narrow down on because the data is given in such broad areas. But as we said, we can only work with what we've got. So that's it. The other two states really of interest are South Australia and WA. South Australia, whilst it has a current and short-term future oversupply, we have a significance of about 660 places under supply. Looking forward into the future 3 years, if we exclude all of the existing and legacy builds. WA, about 170 places under supply. So they've come a long way in a very short time because obviously WA was the last state to bring in the SDA scheme. So they're still catching up, but again, really important to know where you need to be building there because there are areas of oversupply. So was there anything else there that you wanted to add about how we've calculated all this data, Lenore?
No, just one thing I would like to point out, even though we have a certain number of places, we can determine a certain number of places, we do not know what quality of places there are. Though the places might be theoretically there, they might not be, livable, very desirable or livable.
Very, very good point. Yeah. Exactly. So this is just the data. This is not going into any kind of specifics on what design type, what category.
Yes.
Whether it's an apartment, a house, a group home. This is not showing that. This is just giving the big picture.
Yeah, and therefore I think it's important to look at the new build dwellings in particular because they are bound to be at least a bit more attractive and a bit more desirable and livable.
Yes, for sure. However, having said that, we've seen a lot of stock out there and we constantly hear the same story of new build homes, houses, apartments that are just horrible.
Yes.
They're so poorly built. They're such a bad design. So they might meet design guidelines.
But there's some of them are so small.
Yeah, small or just bad design. Yeah, they don't work. It might be a bad design for the participants. They don't want to live in it. But you've also got to remember this is the workplace for the care teams.
Exactly.
And if it's not somewhere they can work efficiently and safely, it's also not going to be attractive for a SIL organisation to actually put their clients in there.
Yeah. All right. You can't emphasize enough future-proofing.
And good design.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Which go hand in hand.
All right. So very quickly, let's go through the state by state now. New South Wales. What I've done is I've gone through this data. And just by the way, these reports or certainly the over-under supply is available to download off our website. The areas in New South Wales that I've picked out with the greatest oversupply, only though in the current or short-term future, are Sydney, Outer West and Blue Mountains and Sydney Parramatta. However, they still are showing an undersupply when it comes to the exclusion of legacy and existing. The areas in New South Wales that have the greatest undersupply, current, short-term and long-term, are the Illawarra region, the Richmond Tweed region and Sydney Inner Southwest region. And we hear that all the time, people wanting or providers wanting SDA homes down in those sort of Campbelltown, all the way down there, but also in that inner south area, inner southwest from the, I guess, I'm trying to think of the different suburbs in that area. And off the top of my head, I can't, but we do hear all the time, and there is a potential undersupply of 300 places down there. So that's just in that one SA4 region. So yeah, look, anywhere in New South Wales pretty much is going to be a good bet if you can make it work, if it's going to be feasible. Victoria, not really surprising, the data we're seeing here. We've been talking about this for a while. The most oversupplied area for SDA in Australia is Melbourne West. Current oversupply, short-term, massive oversupply, long-term, even excluding the existing and legacy, still an oversupply. Of course, in this area, these are all new estates, new greenfield areas where there wouldn't have been a lot of existing stock. That is why that data is showing that huge oversupply. So look, if anyone is considering going into Melbourne West area for SDA, huge warning, don't do it. There is already such an oversupply in that area. So if you're being told it's a good area still, then you're being told lies, basically. Okay,
To find a point.
other areas that we're now seeing an oversupply, Melbourne southeast in some areas. However, our long-term supply looks like it's now equilibrium. So I think that has very quickly caught up to the point where it's now time to stop building in the greenfields in the southeast parts of Melbourne. Ballarat, we've been saying for a while now, is oversupplied, and big data jump in the Geelong area. If you have a property that's under construction there now, speed to market is always everything here, then that is probably good to go, but don't commence anything new in that area. There's been a lot going into the pipeline in the Geelong area. The areas we're still seeing that are good in Victoria, Bendigo, the outer east of Melbourne, also other inner areas of Melbourne, inner east, inner south and northeast, a significant undersupply there. And these are the areas where we have apartments coming, and we've been saying this for a long time. You can't go into the greenfields anymore because there's an oversupply. People want to live in the inner and mid rings of the cities, and this data is just showing that that's where the demand long-term is still going to be. Queensland. As I said before, we know that there is a massive oversupply, particularly in the Logan, Ipswich, Toowoomba, Townsville, Wide Bay, Mackay, Moreton Bay North, Cairns regions. Also, interestingly enough, Brisbane East, also oversupplied. Where does Queensland need stock? Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, Moreton Bay South, a little bit, not a lot, and the inner city of Brisbane and the west of Brisbane. Those would be the only areas that we would really recommend, or Brisbane North, the northern suburbs up to around Chermside, I guess, those areas.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Queensland, don't go there. South Australia. Very surprising about, I think, the previous data report that came out, the quarterly data. We saw a massive jump in the pipeline for Adelaide North. And that's just showing now that even long term, we've got an oversupply in the Adelaide northern areas. Adelaide South, we've got a short term and a current oversupply, but long term, there's a lot of existing and old stock there. So that is still potentially a good area to go, as is Adelaide West. Down in the southeast of South Australia, so I'm probably talking about the Murray Bridge areas, there's been quite a bit of pipeline going in there. Short-term oversupply, long-term equilibrium. So we're probably about right there now.
Yeah.
ACT. Interesting. We haven't really done a lot of research into the Australian Capital Territory because we haven't sold anything there. We don't work with any builders or developers there. But we are seeing what looks like a current and a short-term oversupply. But obviously, I'm guessing I'm correct here, Lenore, that again, all the stock there is existing and legacy.
Yes. Yeah. That's
so. This number is saying 276 places under supply projected demand if you exclude the old stock.
Yeah, that's right.
So that is interesting.
Yeah.
WA. About 2 years ago, I predicted that Mandurah was oversupplied, and it's still the most oversupplied area in Western Australia. We now see a short-term undersupply, but a medium-term and long-term oversupply because of the pipeline in Perth southeast and southwest. You're still good to go in inner suburbs of Perth, northeast and northwest. Northwest particularly still has a big demand. Short-term demand, medium-term demand and long-term demand of between 200 and 300 places there. If you can find land that is reasonably priced in the northwest of Perth or even in the northeast and can deal with the current issues of council requirements of builds, so that's probably a good place to go. The last two areas very quickly I want to touch on, Tasmania, which is showing, going on this data, a significant undersupply in Hobart and Launceston, as well as the north and northwest of Tasmania. But Lenore, things changed in Tasmania about a year ago in terms of the data reported by the NDIA, if you remember.
Pipeline?
The in-kind.
Oh, the in-kind, yes. Yeah. So in-kind are places that are not, that are for people with a disability, but they are not registered with the NDIA.
Exactly.
So,
So you kind of assume they're similar to existing or legacy properties.
Yeah.
But they've not been grandfathered into the SDA system. And so they stopped reporting on those places a year ago, June 2023. These stats we're looking at now were based on the June 2024 stats. And I just actually had a look back to June 2023, and we actually had 299 places in kind. At the moment, we're looking at 152 places under supply in Hobart. So essentially, if you look at that in-kind stock, we don't know what it is, we don't know where it is, we don't know what quality it is.
Yes.
We might actually have a short-term oversupply, even though the NDI data does not show that. Bit harder to tell there.
Yes.
But there has been a little bit of supply going into Hobart in the last few reports.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. Launceston still looks okay when I look at the in-kind figures from a year ago and take that off our current undersupply. We've still got a bit of an undersupply, so still looks like Launceston might potentially be an okay area to go. Northern Territory, this was very interesting. We know that there's quite a demand there, but I think the demand that's showing is maybe not as accurate as it could be. And yes, there's been quite a bit of new build and pipeline going in, and we're looking like we've got an oversupply both in the immediate future and the long term when you exclude the existing legacy stock. So I'm actually a little wary of that information. I don't know it's quite correct.
The numbers are quite low overall, so it looks like oversupply. But yeah, if the numbers are small, then it's it doesn't look right.
Yes. So we won't really read anything into that at this point until we get more clarity. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there. I don't want to talk too much about all these figures without you being able to actually see them. But just to let you know, we do have that report, the over-under supply report currently as of the June 2024 data. And the SDA trends, supply and demand trends, is a work in progress and will hopefully be available to the public soon.
Yes. So keep an eye out.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Lenore. Thank you for all your hard work in putting this data together, because it
was a pleasure.
It's so important to have these.
I mean that.
Yeah, I know you love doing it. I do too. But it's so important to get that kind of clarity on the trends and on what's changing, because it is changing so quickly at the moment.
Yeah, and even looking at the over-under, we have now done 2 iterations. There's a difference to be seen.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
More on that and on another episode.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you. Talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure you are subscribed and following us so you can keep in the loop with all of our upcoming episodes. We would really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star rating, a written review, and to share this podcast with those that could benefit. Until next time, catch you on the next episode.